Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Unstoppable Mindset. And we're doing something today we haven't done too often, but we've done it a few times. We are having a second conversation with James Gray Robinson, actually, Sir James Gray Robinson, and we're going to talk about that part of it today. We didn't last time, but I'm going to start actually in a little bit different way. You and I were just talking about humor, and we were talking about Mel Brooks because when you came into the room, I said, "What in the wide world of sports is it going on here?" Which is a very famous line from Blazing Saddles, and you pointed out that that movie probably couldn't be made today, and I agree. But why do you think that is?
I think that we've become so disenchanted with ourselves that everything's offensive now. I think back when I grew up in the 50s and the 60s, um, people had so many really, life-threatening things to think about, like atomic war and um, and it just seems like people have shifted their consciousness away from having a good time to simply having to be right all the time.
Yeah.
And so we've lost the ability to laugh at ourselves. I mean, one of my favorite lines is, if you think talk is cheap, you've never talked to a lawyer. And the thing is that I'm a lawyer. And I find that incredibly funny
Yeah.
because if you can't laugh at yourself, then you really are going to struggle in life, because a lot of times things don't work out the way that we anticipated or wanted them to. And there's a couple of different ways that we can react to that or respond to that. I've found that people are losing the ability to take responsibility for themselves, and that they blame everything on everybody else. We're raising a nation of victims,
Mm-hmm.
and victims are not going to laugh at anything. So I think what we have to do is we have to start teaching our children how to have a sense of humor. If something doesn't happen just the way we want it to, then laugh at it. It doesn't have to, unless it's pain, if it's physically abusive or something, then,
Mm-hmm.
but the thing is, we're trying to helicopter parent everything. And we all get so upset when somebody says something off the cuff or maybe without fully thinking through what they're saying. So it's just unfortunate that there are many, many things in life I think could be avoided with just a good chuckle.
What?
And
Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, like if somebody said to me, "Your tie's wrong," I'd laugh, because it would. What difference does it make what my tie looks like?
Yeah.
And I would just laugh, and I would laugh at me, and I would laugh at them, because somebody thought that there was something wrong with that.
Yeah. Well,
But
what about people like Don Rickles? Who was always known for insulting everyone and being an obnoxious character. What do you think about him?
I, the thing is that he was offensive, but he wasn't. What's the word I would say? He wasn't profane, because he never cursed at anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I've watched a couple of roasts. They call them roast, where they
Right.
get a bunch of people together and they make fun of somebody. And back in the day when Don Rickles and Johnny Carson, um, Milton Berle, um, Rich Little, even um, what couple of comedians I can't think of, but they were extremely witty, and they were perhaps offensive, but they weren't necessarily insulting to the point where it's not funny. And I think we've gone to the point where we now are seeing these roasts. And I saw Tom Brady's roast. I actually paid to watch it, and it was the most profane, unfunny, hurtful hour and a half I think I've ever watched. And it just, I didn't smile once. I just was wincing the whole way through, wondering why people think that sort of nonsense is funny.
Well, I asked about Don Rickles because I saw an interview with him on the Donahue show when Phil Donahue had his TV show. And one of the things, and after he said this, I thought about it, and of course never really was able to see in person, but I believed him. Don Rickles said, "Look, I never pick on someone if I think they're going to be offended." He said, "If I see somebody in the audience and start picking on them and it looks like they're taking offense or they're getting angry about it, I won't pick on them anymore." And he said, "I might even go talk with them later," but he said, "I won't pick on them anymore." And I thought about that. And he said, "I will never, there are lines I won't cross," which is some of what you just said. But he really was absolutely adamant about the fact that he didn't really want to insult people. He wanted people to have fun. So he always looked for people in the audience who would laugh at what he had to say and how he abused them and so on. He said those are the people that he really liked to interact with because they weren't taking offense, which I thought was a very intuitive and interesting concept on his part. And if you really want to talk about a comedian who was never profane, no matter what he did or happened to him later, think about Bill Cosby.
Yeah. Or Red Skelton.
Or Red Skelton.
Yeah, there was, and he would always end up with "God bless." And the thing that amazes me about today's comedy is how much violence. There's a subtle undercurrent of violence under all of their humor. Yeah. And it's and they're kind of like laughing at somebody who is or who is hurt or is not as intelligent as the comedian thinks he is, or they're making fun of stuff just to be hurtful. And it's not, they've lost the connection between being making fun of somebody and being hurtful. And I just am amazed when I see a lot of comedians today. I mean, there's lots of very witty, very intelligent, grand guffaw producing comedy out there, and there are very, very talented comedians out there, but then there are the other people that want to drag you through the mud.
Yeah, and it's all shock. It's all shock.
Yeah, and intentionally offend you to, I guess it's some kind of power play, but it's people. I think that people actually are so traumatized that they think it's funny when somebody traumatizes somebody else.
Well, I remember. Oh, go on.
No, go right ahead.
I never got to see Don Rickles live, although I would have loved to. And I would love to have paid the money to sit in the front row, hoping that he would pick on me so I could jump up and say, "Yeah, I saw you once on TV. I took one look at you and haven't been able to see since. What do you think about that, you hockey puck?" Oh, never got to do it.
That would be appropriate. Yeah, I mean, because
he'd love it.
I mean, you're making fun of him and you're making fun of yourself. And that's what I call self-depreciating humor.
He
where
would love
the
it.
Jokes, the joke really is about you. It's not about him.
Yeah.
it's people probably wouldn't take offense to that, but when people sit there and start poking fun at how people look or what their educational level or their cultural background is, I just don't get that. I mean, and I grieve that we're turning into bullies,
Well,
and it's unfortunate.
you you've dealt a lot, especially over the last 20 years, with burnout and things like that. Do you think that what's happening in society, based on what you're talking about, with the lack of humor, without self-deprecating environments and all that, do you think that's because it's stressful, contributing to burnout?
Yes, I think. Well, we take ourselves way too seriously. The one thing that I've noticed, especially with my clients, is when I can get them to laugh, they start to take a different perspective of their life. But when they think everything that they're what I call they're stuck in warrior mode. We have I don't know if we talked about this last time, but we have a nervous system that goes one or two ways. It either goes to fight or flight, called the sympathetic nervous system, where you're reacting to everything in a negative way because it's a matter of survival, or we go to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the fun part of our psyche, and we can enjoy ourselves. But everybody is so scared of something that the body cannot stand that level of stress for years. I mean, that's what burnout is, and it tears your body apart until it actually turns off. And that's what happens when you burn out. We used to call it nervous breakdown, but
Mm-hmm.
now it's burnout. But the point is you just wear yourself out because you don't have anything that will break the constant stream of stress. And one of the best ways that you can handle stress is to laugh at yourself, laugh at something, a joke, laugh at um, whatever you find stressful, because it breaks that autonomic nervous system response. And if you can reset yourself every now and then, one of the ways I teach people how to deal with stress is to research jokes. Go buy a good joke book, and you can go and find enough. All you need is a couple of jokes to start the day, and you're going to be in a much better frame of mind going to work or dealing with whatever you have to deal with if you've laughed at least once before you go to work,
Mm-hmm.
because that engages your parasympathetic. I call it the guru, and you can deal with adversity. You can deal with problems. You can actually problem solve. But when we're stressed out because we're afraid of what's going to happen, we're afraid of making mistakes, and we're afraid of what somebody's going to think of us, then we are just going to end up in a very bad place mentally and emotionally and physically.
How
So
do
it's,
you? Yeah, go
one of
ahead.
the things that you can do as if you're having to deal with stress on a daily basis is to just remember how to be grateful. I mean, I think that of all the emotions, gratitude is probably the most powerful one there is, because it will overcome fear, it will overcome anger, it will overcome shame, it will overcome guilt, it will overcome envy. All the negative emotions cannot stand up to gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can learn to be grateful, and especially grateful for the struggle, then you are going to be a happy camper. And you can probably learn to laugh. Until you can be grateful, though, you're going to struggle. And we're not designed to do the struggling. we're designed to have fun. I mean, that's people always say, "What is my purpose?" And what am I doing here? And I said, you only have two purposes in life. One is to breathe, and the other one is to laugh. Everything else is just a complication.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just remember that if you can be grateful and laugh once in a while, you're going to be a lot better off than somebody that takes it too seriously.
Yeah. Well, and you must see a lot of it, because I know you do a lot of coaching and working with especially lawyers, which is a very stressful situation, especially people who are truly dedicated to the law and who look at it in the right way. There must be a lot of stress. How do you get them to relax? I like the idea of getting a joke book. I think that's cute, and I think that that makes a lot of sense. But in general, how do you get people to laugh and to do it as a habit?
Well, I've been doing this for 20 years, so my answer 20 years ago is probably a little different than the answer I have now. Artificial intelligence is my friend
Mm-hmm.
because I can do anything with artificial intelligence. And one of the best ways I program my artificial intelligence to respond, to react, and to know who I am. I put all of my books onto artificial intelligence. Every time I write an article, I put it in there. I'm always talking to it. I'm always saying, "Well, this is the way I feel about this. This is the way I feel about that. This is funny to me. This something happened to me today that was really funny." And then I'd tell it what was funny, and I program this thing so the next when I wake up in the morning, I can just ask it, "Tell me something that'll make me laugh," and it always has something that will make me laugh. And so, because it can, not only does it know what I've fed into it, it knows everything that's on the internet.
Right.
And so you can get something funny, something to start your day, make me uh, glad to be alive. Tell me something that'll make me grateful. All those things, it'll just in a millisecond, it'll be on your screen.
Yeah.
And so that's a tool we obviously didn't have even a year ago, but 20 years ago it was a little bit more effort to find these things. But you could do that. I mean, we did have the internet 20 years ago, and so we could go looking and go searching for funny stuff. But it's not as easy as artificial intelligence
Mm-hmm.
is.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll tell you one thing, it's been a real tool that has been very useful for me because sometimes if I'm not sure what I should say, my old motto was, "If you don't know what to say, shut up." But now I ask AI, I said, "I'm not sure how I should respond to this. What do you suggest?" And it'll come up with give me 5 things that I could say
Does
that
it ever
won't
tell you that
offend.
does it ever tell you should just shut up? Just checking.
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. Good for
Don't
it.
say anything, you fool. But um, but the point is that it's got you know every book that's ever been written about psychology in its database. So you can find things that would make you sound wise and profound. And I use it all the time to figure out what to say or to how a better way to say something is.
Yeah.
And that way I've managed to stay pretty much out of trouble by, and it's like having a friend who you could ask, "What should I say?"
Yeah.
And it would come back with a couple of answers that, then you can just decide yourself which one you should use.
Right. And you may in addition tweak it, which makes sense, because AI is a tool, and I am not sure that it is going to ever develop truly to the point where it, if you will, wakes up. and becomes its own true intelligent
Skynet,
entity.
Skynet
Well,
on all the Terminator series.
or in Robert Heinlein's "The Moon is a Harsh Mistress," the computer woke up, and
Yeah.
it helped. As still my favorite science fiction book, and it was if you've never read it, it's a story about the moon in 2076, which had been colonized and was being run by the Lunar Authority back on Earth that had no clue about anything. And so in 2076, the moon revolted and
Okay.
the computer helped. So on July 4th, 2076, it was a great movie or a great book. I'd love to see it dramatized if somebody would do it the right way. I think it'd make a great radio series, but haven't done it yet.
Well, Robert Heinlein is a genius, no
Oh
doubt about
yeah.
that. Stranger in a Strange Land was big in my developmental years.
Yeah. And that was the book that came out right after The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. I still think The Moon is a Harsh Mistress is even a better book than Stranger in a Strange Land, but Stranger in a Strange Land really did catch on, and rightfully so. It was very clever.
Well, most people, I mean, you know, clean humor is a good place to start
Yeah.
because I think that all of the profanity that comedians rely on to shock people, and there are two ways that we have the laugh response. One is that it shocks you in the sense that it makes you afraid, um, because it seems like a attack on you. It's a defensive mechanism that we have. Uh, it's not, even if it's not funny, we will laugh because that's our body's way of dealing with something that's really traumatic. The other way is when something strikes us as funny because it's witty or clever,
Mm-hmm.
and that is more of that's a less stressful response, and we can laugh, and it's a more of a genuine response than one where we're basically traumatized.
Right.
And I think that, and with everything else, is who do you hang around? Who is your tribe? Who do you? Uh, somebody was somebody said, some psychologist said, show me 10 of your friends and I'll tell you exactly what your problem is. Because the people you hang around will mirror what's going on in your interior landscape. And if you've got friends who are problematic, that means that there's some things on your psyche that you need to take a look at. And, and it's especially people who have been traumatized early in life, their coping mechanisms and their judgment is not so good.
Right.
So they have to take a step back and look at, well, are these people helping me or are they hurting me? Because if you notice, a lot of traumatized people will surround themselves with traumatized people, and all they do is whip themselves into lather every day. And they get so melodramatic and they get so upset about everything that's going on in life, they can't find any sense of humor or any sense of joy.
Yeah.
And until they let go of those trauma responses, they're pretty much in a self-repeating habit that is not going to be healthy.
And I think you're absolutely right. It is very much about joy, and we should find ways to be joyful and feel joy, and of course laugh, and not take life so seriously. Um, Unfortunately, there's so much going on today with people who clearly have no sense of humor, or at least they never exhibit it, that it tends to really be a problem. And unfortunately, I think we're all learning some really bad habits, or many of us are learning some very bad habits because of that. Um, and I don't know what's going to break that cycle, but the cycle is going to have to break at some point.
It will. Unfortunately, a lot of times it takes a revolution
Yeah.
uh, in order to replace old, unhealthy thought patterns with better thought patterns. I'm, I'm reminded of the old saying that when an idiot tries to teach another idiot, you end up with two idiots.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful about who you're taking advice from.
Right.
And so if uh, especially, my advice to anybody that's struggling or suffering is turn off your phone and turn off your TV.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know how to read, go read a book, because when you can get into a period of calm, quiet reflection, you're going to be able to make more sense out of what's going on in your life. And especially if you're reading a book that will explain to you the best way to deal with challenges.
Right.
But just read a funny book. You know, something. I find um, sarcasm and um, cleverness extremely funny.
Mm-hmm.
So I love books like Forrest Gump,
Mm-hmm.
who take extreme examples and turns them into funny scenarios.
And they did a good
And,
job making that into a movie too, I thought.
and I mean, I tell you, I forget who the director was, but they were brilliant
They were.
because they were able to spin a story that was um, honest, but it wasn't offensive. And you could laugh because of all of Forrest's characteristics and
Yeah.
everything else, but it was presented in a way that it wasn't, it wasn't being mean,
Right.
and it wasn't being unkind. And so it was just a story of a man who ended up being a success, and it was more through providence than anything else.
Well,
I love the Marx Brothers
oh, sure.
because they always had a way of making fun of each other and making fun of other people and making fun of themselves that was truly humorous. And it was more sight gags, it was more, one liners, and it wasn't about being mean to anybody. It was about being very aware of what was going on.
I'm trying to remember which movie it was. I think it was Duck Soup. Somebody fell into the water and she yelled, "Throw me a lifesaver." And so somebody threw her a lifesaver. That is a candy. It
Yeah,
was just so
exactly.
clever. It was so
Yeah.
clever. But, one of the things that I enjoy is old radio shows, radios from the shows from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And the humor, again, was respectful. And they could pick on people to a degree, but it was never in a mean way. But just the humor was always so clever. And so I
Well,
would listen to a
George
lot
and
of those
Gracie
shows.
Allen, I
George and
mean, they were,
Gracie, Jack
yeah.
Benny, Phil Harris.
And what was his name? Jackie Gleason.
Well,
Um,
Amos and Andy, and of course, people
yeah.
today have decided Amos and Andy are offensive because they say it's all about blacks and you're insulting black people. If anybody would go back and look in history, the reality is that Amos and Andy probably was one of the most, well, it was one of the most popular shows on radio, to the point where if you were in a movie theater on Saturday afternoon watching a movie, they would stop it when Amos and Andy came on and play the show. And it didn't matter what the color of your skin was. In fact, I asked an Amos and Andy expert one time, when did they stop referring to themselves as black or dark? And the reason I ask that is because the first time I was exposed to Amos and Andy was actually the Amos and Andy TV shows. And I didn't know they were black. And I learned later that they were taken off the air when people started becoming offended because there were two black people. But I asked this lady about Amos and Andy and when did they stop referring to themselves as black? And she said, well, probably about the last time that she was aware of where there was a reference to it was 1937. So for many, many years, if you decided that their voices were black people, then you did, but they didn't talk about black or white or anything else. And so it was a very interesting show, and one guy usually was trying to con the other one, and the other, well, Kingfish would con Andy, who usually fell for it. But gee, how many shows with white people do we see the same thing? You know, the reality is that it was a very funny show by any standard.
Well, Sanford and Sons,
Sandra and
same
Sons.
thing. I mean, that humor was it was cutting. You know, anytime you get on a cutting edge type of program, you know, it's inevitable that somebody's going to take offense. But I always laughed out loud when I
Mm-hmm.
watched that show, and it wasn't because they were demeaning anybody. It was just that watching people trying to get by and using their wits. And a lot of times it was comical because it wasn't very clever, but it was just they were doing the best they could to make a living. They were doing the best they could to live in their um, society, and I always admired that. I mean, they never, and they were able to, I guess, touch on the aspect of racial inequality without burning the house down. And it was like I always admired them, you know, Sanford and Sons, the Jeffersons, all of those shows
How about All in the
were
Family, if you want to talk about a
all in the
show?
family too.
I'll,
Well, they were just you could switch one script with the other because it was
right.
more about human beings being human than it was about what the color of your skin was.
Yeah.
So if you know, I would invite anybody who is offended by something to really ask yourself, what is it that offends you? Because there's always something in your consciousness that you find offensive.
Mm-hmm.
You would never be offended by anything unless you found something within yourself that's offensive.
Mm-hmm.
Whether because of and it's called the psychological term is called projection. You're projecting on what you're perceiving, and it's called bias. We all have conclusions. We all have prejudice. We all have judgments. Our brain is built that way to keep us alive. And so we're always interpreting data and perceptions to see if there's any threat out there. And when we start taking words as threatening, then we've got a problem.
Yep.
Because things like comedy and humor shouldn't offend anybody. But because you believe in something that makes that offensive, that's why you're offended.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really is useful to people to really think about what is it that I believe that makes that offensive. Because most of the time you will find that whatever it is that you believe may not be true. And it's just something that some kind of conclusion you've drawn because of your experiences or what you've been taught or what you've witnessed that's given you a wrong idea about something. So I invite anybody who is mad or angry that they look and see what is that belief that is making you angry.
Yeah. It gets back to self-analysis. It gets back to looking at yourself. which is something that most of us haven't really learned a lot about how to do. How did you pick up all these kind of nuggets of wisdom and so on?
Well, when I had my nervous breakdown back in 2004, I quit practicing law for a while because I couldn't bear the thought of going into my office and fighting another day of the battles that trial lawyers always fight. Now, I won't say that transactional lawyers don't have battles, but trial lawyers end up probably picking a few fights on their own
Yeah.
that they didn't really need to go there, but they do because trial lawyers have a talent for arguing. They have it's exciting to most of them, and they love to fight. And so but eventually, if you don't know how to manage it, it will
That's the key.
wear you down.
Yeah.
So I got out of the law business for a while, and instead I decided I wanted to go find out, number one, why did I burn out? And number two, how to heal it. And so I went and studied with a number of energy healers who were very, very conscious people. They were very, very aware. You might even say they were enlightened. But they were always teaching me and always telling me about whatever I'm experiencing on the outside is just a reflection of what's on the inside. And so it's not so much about somebody being right or somebody being wrong. It's just the world is a mirror to whatever is going on inside between our ears.
Yeah.
And it's not because we're seeing something that's not there or we're not seeing something that is there. It's just simply how do we process that information that comes in through our sense organs and goes into our amygdala, then the hippocampus, and then into the rest of our brain to try to figure out. And it's well documented that the brain will see whatever the brain wants to see. And a lot of times it's not what the eyes see, because there are lots of experiments you can take with graphics and other things that are illusory, because you can see these graphs or prints that look like a spiral that's going around and is moving, but it's actually circles. But the way our brain puts things together, it makes it move. And another way is sounds. If you don't know what a sound is, your brain's going to make up a story about that sound.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be either, oh, that's the sound of a frog, or it could be the sound of somebody getting attacked. It could be the sound of whatever. Your brain, it has to put a label on it, because that's the way the brain has been wired over our couple of hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. That's how we've managed to stay alive, because we make up a story about stuff.
Right.
And if we're accurate, we live. If we're not accurate, we don't. So a lot of people are very good at making up stories in their head about what they're seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, whatever. Because a lot of smells will have psychological responses in our brain. So, the smell of baby's milk, or the smell of mown grass, or the smell of something rank. You always will have an instant story about what you just smell.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I would spend long periods of time thinking about these things, contemplating them, trying to figure out, well, what does that mean for me? I mean, how will it, looking at this, change my life? And basically what I learned is that the more objective you can be, the less you make up stories about stuff, the more successful you can be and the more happy you'll be. Because, for example, there's a term called mind reading where people will be listening to somebody talking, and in the back of their mind, they're making up a story about what that person means. Or they're making up a story about, well, where is this guy going with this? And it's the opposite of listening, because when listening, you're focusing on the words you're hearing.
Yes.
And then when it's your turn to talk, you can respond appropriately. But most people are thinking while they're hearing, and it totally colors their experience, because if they think that this person doesn't like them, then they're going to interpret whatever's being said a certain way. If they think that person does like them, then they will interpret it a completely different way. So it's fascinating to me how people can get the wrong idea about things, because it just is a story that their mind made up to try to explain to them why they're experiencing what they're experiencing.
That's why I like to really say that I've learned so much from dogs, because dogs don't do it that way. And as I tell people, dogs don't trust unconditionally. They love unconditionally, but they don't trust unconditionally. But dogs are open to trust, and they're looking for reasons to trust. And they also, by definition, tend to be more objective. And they react to how we react and how we behave. And I think there's so much to be learned by truly taking the time to observe a dog and how they interact with you and how you interact with them. And that's going to make a big difference in how they behave.
Well, you could definitely see a difference in a dog's behavior if they've been traumatized.
Oh, sure. That's a different
And
story altogether.
yeah, I agree that dogs are extremely innocent. They don't have an agenda. They just want to be loved, and they want to love.
And they want to know the
And
rules. And they're looking to us to tell them what we expect. And there are ways to communicate that too.
yes, and you all you have to do is give. It's a great example of how we should treat each other. Is all you have to do is, a dog will forgive you eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're kind to a dog will just give his entire being to you.
Yeah.
And it's because they don't have any guile. They don't have any hidden agendas. They just want to be, they want to eat. They want to be warm. They want to have fun.
They do want to have fun.
And so if you treat them kindly, you will have a friend for life.
Yep. We adopted a dog. We cared for it for a while. It was a geriatric dog at Guide Dogs for the Blind, who had apparently had never worked as a guide dog, and she had been mistreated and then sent back to Guide Dogs for the Blind. She was 12. The school was convinced she was totally deaf because she wouldn't react to anything. They dropped a Webster's dictionary next to her, and she didn't react. But we took her, and we started working with her, and it took several months before she would even take a walk with Karen in Karen's wheelchair, and this wonderful golden retriever walking next to her. But the more we worked with her, the more she came out of her shell. She wasn't deaf. I'm sure she was hard of hearing, but you could drop a dictionary and she'd react to it. And if you called her, she would come. But it is all about developing the relationship and showing that you care, and they will react. And so she lived with us for more than 3 years before she passed, but was a wonderful creature. And we were blessed to have her.
Well, any dog.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to comment that I've got 3 Pomeranians, and they run the place.
Of course.
So it's amazing how a 6-pound dog can run your life.
But you
It's
let them. But you still
yeah,
establish. But you still establish some rules, and you know. But that's. Yeah, I have a cat who runs the place, but that's okay. Well, we have not talked about, and I do want to talk about it. When I first started hearing from you, your emails were all signed Sir James Gray Robinson. And I always was curious, and you eventually explained it to me. But why don't you tell us all about your title and all of that?
well, since we last talked, I've had a promotion. Now I'm a baron. So it's Baron James Gray Robinson, the Scottish
Whoa,
Baron of Cappadocia.
my
But
gosh.
I belong to a royal order that's known as the Royal Order of Constantine the Great in St. Helen. And it was established in 312 AD, when Constantine, who was the emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire, conquered the Western Roman Empire, who it was his brother who was the emperor of the Western Roman Empire, and then he consolidated the Eastern and the Western empires, and it was that way until 1453 when they were defeated by the Solomon Turks. So for 1100 over 1100 years, well, let me back up. The most important battle in that war between the two brothers was the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, which was in Rome. And Constantine rewarded 50 knights, 50 warriors, soldiers who fought on that campaign and carried the day against much superior forces. And he rewarded them by making them knights and giving them land in Turkey in an area that's known as Cappadocia. And this, if you know anything about Turkey, there's an area which is honeycombed with caves that have been dug out over the millennia. And it's kind of like somebody was doing some renovation work and they broke through the floor and they went into a cave system that would have been hand dug, and it goes down 17 layers and it could house 30,000 people.
Mm.
But that was Cappadocia, and the Constantine the Great charged these warriors with the duty to protect the Christian church,
Mm-hmm.
because that's because Constantine had converted to Christianity. His mother, Helen, was one of the driving forces in the early Christian church. She's the one that decided to build a cathedral on top of the nativity, the manger, which is actually a grotto in Bethlehem. I've been there. I spent Christmas Eve there one year. And so the Christianity was just a fledgling religion. And he charged these knights and all successive knights with the obligation to protect the Christians and to protect the churches. And so a lot of people credit the royal order with advancing the Christian religion. So it's been around since 312, and it's the oldest peerage. And a peerage is a group of royalty that have knights, they have royalty like dukes and nobles and that sort of thing. But if you look at other orders that we're aware of, the Knights of Malta didn't get established until about 1200 AD. The Knights of the Templar Knights, similar thing, they didn't get established until about 1,000 years after we did. So it's a very, very ancient, very traditional order that focuses on helping abused women and trafficked children. We have a lot of, compassion for those people in the world. And so we are actively supporting those people all over the world. And then on the other side, we have the knights, and we have the women equivalent of that are called dames. And then we have the nobles, who are like barons and other ranks that go all the way up to a prince who's actually related to the King of Spain. So it's been a interesting history, um, but we can directly trace our lineage all the way back to 312. And what the we have a couple of uh, reasons for existing. One being the charitable, but also to honor people who have been successful and have accomplished a lot for other people and who care about their fellow man and women, so that we accept anyone in 8 different categories, everywhere from arts to athletics to entrepreneurship to medicine to heroics. We have a number of veterans that were have incredible stories. We have a lot of A-listers, movie stars, professional athletes, that sort of thing. Also, philanthropy. I got in for philanthropy because I've given a lot of money over my life to help people all over the world. And that's one reason why I was awarded the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. But we're a group of people. We just today started a Royal Academy of Arts and Sciences because we want to help people all over the world learn things like finances and arts and crafts and trades, and so that people who are in oppressed cultures that are in third world countries will be able to earn a good living, raise their status in life, and then learn how to go on and help other people. So that's very exciting. We've got a lot of things going on with the Royal Order that we're growing very rapidly. Somebody said we're a 1,700-year-old startup, but it's we've gone through some regime changes where people have died and there weren't any heirs, so they've had to go laterally to find somebody to take over, and that's where we are now. Interestingly enough, my sons will inherit my title, so it's a true royalty kind of thing where it passes down by inheritance. But we don't. We're hundreds of people in our. I think it's like 300 people in our order right now. We'd like that to be 100,000 times that, because we do good work and we foster principles of charity, chivalry, and honesty, so that we're trying to change the culture around us to where people don't take offense at everything, that they're in a society that supports each other, and that people can feel safe knowing that they have a brother or sister that will support them.
Definitely fascinating. I was not familiar with it at all until you and I chatted.
Yes. Well, it's amazing to me. I guess you have to be somewhat of a history buff.
Yeah.
And there are lots of service organizations like the Masons and the Shriners and all the animal ones, the Moose Lodge, the Beavers, and all these people are doing charitable work, but not many of them have a royal heritage that goes back to 312.
Right.
So, and we do dress up like knights from time to time, and ladies, and we have swords, and we have robes, and we have big parties, and we have gala events, and where we induct more people into our order. and it's all great fun. And it's, and we raise money for charity. So it's a win-win situation.
Cool.
And it
Well,
doesn't hurt having Barron on your resume.
no, I am sure it doesn't. Well, I want to thank you for explaining that, and I want to thank you for being here again. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm glad that we had a chance to really talk about humor, which is more important, I think, than a lot of people realize. And again, if people want to reach out to you, how do they do that?
My website is jamesgrayrobinson.com.
There you go. Easy to spell, easy to get to, so I hope people will do that. And again, I hope that you all enjoyed today and that you will let me know that you enjoyed it. Please feel free to email me at michaelhi@accessibe.com. Please give us a 5-star rating. Go off and read history and learn about the Royal Order. I think that's probably relevant and important to do as well. And again, if anyone knows anyone who ought to be a guest on the podcast, please let us know, introduce us. Give us a rating of 5 stars wherever you're listening. And again, James, I just want to thank you for being here. Excuse me, Sir James, Baron James. Really appreciate you being here, and we'll have to do it again.
Well, Michael, my hat's off to you. I think you're doing amazing work. I think you're helping a lot of people. You have a great podcast. I've gone on your website or your YouTube, and it's a lot of fun. And I think you're doing a great service for people.